Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. If you have blood sugar issues and you're looking to finally resolve them, I would love to work with you. Please go to bloodsugarcoach.com, put in your information, and you'll be able to book a free 30-minute session with me, and we can see how I can help you. I have personally resolved my own type 2 diabetes. I am no longer a diabetic, and I did so with natural medicine. In the last 6 years, I've gone on to help a lot of people to also completely resolve their blood sugar issues so that they now have normal blood sugar. So if you'd like to no longer have blood sugar issues, please go to bloodsugarcoach.com. That's bloodsugarcoach.com. I look forward to working with you and enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 202. Today we are in for such a treat. We have a wonderful healer with us today. Dr. Shiroko Sokitch is an amazing acupuncturist and medical doctor, and I love that she has a background in allopathic medicine, in the more medicine that we're used to, right? In growing up in Canada or the United States, we're used to seeing a medical doctor, and she took that and went the more traditional Chinese medicine route of acupuncture and understanding the body on such a different level. And so she brings a wonderful and unique perspective as a healer to us today. I'm so thrilled to bring you here today for all of our wonderful listeners to learn from you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted.
Excellent. Well, I'd love for you to start by sharing your story, because you really have a beautiful story, especially how does a medical doctor end up falling in love with acupuncture?
Well, it's a little bit longer story than that, actually. Originally, when I wanted to become a doctor, it started when I was 5 years old. And it was because my very best friend in the world was my great-grandmother. And she was the person who had time for me and who spent time with me as a child. And my mom was a single mom, and my grandma was busy running her own business. So that was the person that babysat me and spent time with me. And one night I was visiting her, and she collapsed in front of me. And I wasn't able to wake her up or get her to come around. So I ran to get my grandma and my mom, and they had to take her away by ambulance. And about a week later, they wouldn't let me at the time go to the hospital, or that wasn't a thing that they did with kids in Germany back then. So my mom came and told me with tears in her eyes that my great-grandmother had died, and I didn't know what that means. So she said that her heart had stopped beating. And she said I would never see her again. And so, of course, the one thing I wanted most in the world was to see her again and to have her back in my life. And so I started imagining a machine that would make her heart beat so that she would come back. And basically, that was the day I decided I wanted to be a doctor. And fast forward many years to almost finishing med school, towards like my third year of medical school. I was in a rotation. And the very first time I really got to save a life was when a patient came into the emergency room having been shot. And we got him into the operating room within like 5 minutes. And we plugged the hole in his heart, and we stopped him from dying. And
Wow.
It was so profound. It was like, wow, first time to save a life. And so, at that moment, I decided I wanted to be a surgeon. And so I got into surgical residency, and I went and I started my residency. And interestingly, we didn't spend a lot of time saving lives. We spent a lot of time with very mundane, daily operation kind of things. And a few things started to sort of happen in my life. And I think it was because I had achieved my lifelong goal. The things that I hadn't worked on, or the things that I had ignored, started to sort of come up. And at one point I reached this moment where it felt like I couldn't move forward. And I remember one of the things that triggered it was a patient that was this younger woman. She was only in her early 40s, and she came in because she supposedly had a cyst in her pancreas. And we were supposed to take out the cyst, and she was going to go on with her life, and everything was fine. And she was happy, and our surgeon was happy. And I was the intern, so I was helping with the procedure. And we went in and found that she had cancer instead of a cyst. So the operation only lasted like 20 minutes because we opened her and we realized we couldn't fix it and closed her. And the surgeon was about her age at the time, and he was devastated. He was so upset. But he walked in and he told her with very cold tone of voice that she had cancer and she was going to die, and he couldn't do anything.
Mm.
And I was heartbroken. I was devastated for her and for him because I could see that they were both in pain. And yet I didn't know what to do. I was like 25 years old or something, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to help her. And this is one of those examples of how, a very small operation, she had so much physical pain from that operation and so much pain, period, after that. And there was nothing we could do for her pain. There was nothing anybody offered her. And I didn't know how to be comforting. And I began to realize that there was more to saving a life than taking them from death's door. There was saving their spirit and helping them emotionally as well. And shortly after that, it was during my second year of residency, I had a sort of a crisis of my own where I felt like I couldn't go on, and I became suicidal and decided I'd better take a month off from my residency to figure out what really had to happen for me. So I did, and during that month, I became physically ill myself, and then I had a dream, and the dream was that if I stayed in surgery, I would die. And it was like one of those banners, like a banner that went across my dream field. If you stay in surgery, you will die,
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And, I have always sort of had guidance in my life, and I felt like this was guidance. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't quite know what to do. I was in the middle of my second year of residency, and surgery residency is 5 years. So I was like, okay, I'm going to finish my second year and then figure out what I want to do. And I had loved emergency medicine, so I decided I would probably work in the ER until I figured out what residency I wanted to do. And during the time that I had left in the hospitals as a resident, somebody gave me a book called The Web That Has No Weaver. And it was about Chinese medicine. And it was about how acupuncture had been researched in China and how acupuncture worked. And the title, The Web That Has No Weaver, is such a beautiful title because it describes the energy that runs our bodies. And I just fell in love with the concept. I fell in love with the concept that we were made up out of energy and that energy traveled through our bodies. I love the idea that we could solve our problems by putting little needles in the skin or taking the right kind of herbs or eating the right kinds of foods. And it just appealed to me. And I'm a surgical type when what I mean by that is if I see a problem, I want to solve it, which is what surgeons want to do. That's why surgery exists, is because if there's a problem, we can cut it out or remove it or change something in someone's structure, and it's an intervention that will change them. Acupuncture is too. And so I feel like in a certain way it was the perfect thing to go into because it was an intervention I could do and change someone's life. Yet I could change it on many, many more levels than with surgery.
Right, because you could take that patient after they've discovered they have cancer and they're in grief, and you can help them through that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that you like instantly cure cancer, but I mean, on an emotional level, you can help them. On a mental level, you can help them. You can definitely help them with the pain.
Yeah.
And so there's so many ways with acupuncture that you could help that patient where the surgeon's skills ended, yours with acupuncture could begin.
Exactly. And sometimes where the surgeon wasn't needed in the end.
Really? Wow. Well, I can you share some stories?
Oh, sure.
I'd love to hear some stories of success that you've had working with your clients and your patients.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Well, many people. I've been in practice, in practice full time doing this for 24 years. So I've been around for a while. So I have lots of stories. Many of them are musculoskeletal sorts of issues where people are going to have back surgery or shoulder surgery, or even people who have come into me with uterine fibroids or ovarian cysts. And through acupuncture, they didn't end up having to have surgery. Their cyst would go away, or their fibroid would shrink, their shoulder would heal so they wouldn't need surgery, or their low back would heal so they wouldn't need surgery. There's countless stories.
I feel like a Baptist. I want to jump into the aisles of the church and start going, hallelujah, amen. I love hearing these stories of healing, but I mean, the acupuncture has been around for thousands of years. And I think,
Yeah.
any healing art, if it didn't work, wouldn't have survived and been passed down generation after generation, with so much intention, if it didn't work, right?
Yes, and not just generation after generation, but now it's crossed cultural lines. In the 70s, Nixon brought it to the US, or when he opened the borders with China, acupuncture came to the US, but it's practiced in Europe, in England, in Germany, in France, and each country has sort of adapted and changed their understanding of it, and improved on the science of it. And it's really quite amazing as we expand to other cultures with the learning what we're capable of doing with acupuncture.
What have you seen, in your, over 20 years of practice with acupuncture, in terms of its influence from America? So the American influence, or the more English speaking world influence on acupuncture. Have you seen acupuncture shift for us culturally, or has any techniques shifted to work better for our genetic makeup, or do you think that the more traditional way that it was always practiced in China works the best?
Well, one of the things about Western is we don't like pain. And especially in our modern culture, we particularly don't like pain. And traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, hurts. Not to be offensive. And it was one of my problems with it when I first learned it, was like we use these fairly thick needles, and there was always an intention of finding a point that could be painful. And so, for one of the very early, like once I finished acupuncture school, one of the first things I learned was my patients didn't like pain. So I started to learn how to put needles in very gently, use very, 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 very thin needles, and to be painless. And the Japanese style of acupuncture is actually oriented towards more painless approach, more superficial needling. So one of the first things I think Westerners have innovated is the pain aspect. Another area where we in the West have changed things is in traditional Chinese medicine. Actually, when somebody has emotional or mental problems, they aren't treated with acupuncture, even though the science of acupuncture theoretically provides for spiritual and emotional healing as well. And I think in the West, we have evolved techniques or used acupuncture more for things like depression, or bipolar disorder, or even people who are schizophrenic have benefited from it. I've worked with a few over my career. And in China, they wouldn't do that.
Why is that?
I don't know. The people who are, extremely mentally disturbed are put in institutions more than they are treated with acupuncture. So,
Interesting. Even the Chinese would have a blind spot with their own medicine.
yeah. Well, we all have blind spots.
Yeah. Ain't that the
Yeah.
truth? So you have this amazing clinic. Tell us about how it evolved to come about that you opened this wonderful heart-to-heart medical center.
Well, when I was in acupuncture school, I had a dream that we would bring together the best of Western and other ways of doing medicine. And I think many people in our culture have had that dream, or many practitioners who do both Chinese or who do integrated medicine have had that dream. So I opened Heart to Heart in 1993 with many different practitioners. And we had chiropractors and massage practitioners, and even a woman who did facials and sound healing and psychic healing. Um, and, over the years it's evolved, and now I'm actually a solo practitioner. So different times, different people have been and come and gone. And I found it more efficient to work alone at the moment. But the idea is to provide the best of integrative medicine, to give healing. And the reason it's called Heart to Heart Medical Center and is because most important to me is the caring connection. And one of the things, that the story of the woman with the pancreatic cancer really illustrated for me was the caring. We were taught to remain professionally distant and to not get, quote unquote, involved with our patients. And as I've evolved as a practitioner and a human, I have learned that there's no way you can't get involved with your patients. You have to care. You have to show them you care. And it is a part of the healing process. And it's the name Heart to Heart has been there from the beginning, but my former husband actually hated the name because he thought it was too woo-woo.
Ah.
And always wanted to change it. And for me, especially since I split up with him over 8 years ago, the name became more solidified after we split up because it was the Heart to Heart that was my evolution after the divorce, and the connection of love and the connection of caring with people that helped me heal, and that I use to help people heal is so vitally important to the process in any health concern.
Absolutely. Do you see a lot of your patients that come to you that they might be presenting with physical symptoms that could be, turned into a diagnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start working with them, you really see that what at the root of it, they're missing happiness, joy, passion, and love in their life, and by helping them nurture that so many things fall into place for them.
I totally agree with that. Yes. I mean, and there are often physical imbalances that contribute. So I look at it as I used to call it a 20-30-50 split, where 20% of a concern is purely physical. There's always a physical component if there's a health concern, but there's also 30% that has to do with lifestyle. And I would say 50% that's emotional and spiritual. And so all of them are connected. And another reason that I love Chinese medicine is because acupuncture addresses all of the elements. It addresses the emotional and the spiritual, the physical, and the lifestyle elements. So
that I love that description, because I keep saying on the podcast that health is not just physical, it's emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, and that we need to address it on all levels. You can't out exercise a bad diet. you can't take supplements to make your heartache go away. If you have some emotional issues to address, if you don't have a fulfilled life and you're not happy, there's no amount of supplements or drugs that are going to fix that. They might mask it, but there's no fixing that unless we go and dive in and do the emotional work. And it's there's never one thing. It's always on all planes of existence. And I love that what you're doing is addressing the person as a whole. How much of your MD training did you have to rewire when you got into acupuncture? Because I know, like with allopathic medicine, a lot of times the doctor will look at symptoms and then look to solve that, and might not look at the person as a whole, look at their life as a whole. Whereas in acupuncture, you really are, right?
yeah, it felt natural to me. So I didn't feel like, and I was fairly young as a physician when I started studying acupuncture. I had only done 2 years of residency and then went to acupuncture school. And so for me, and then I was working in the emergency room at the same time that I was studying acupuncture. So it was this interesting blend that I feel like I had the privilege of studying both at the same time, the practicalities of Western medicine as an ER doctor at the same time that I'm studying Chinese medicine. And it allowed me to bring them together in this really beautiful way. And for me, my understanding of the physical body is greater because of the bigger picture that Chinese medicine looks at. And so I didn't feel like I had to rewire, except that that whole personality of the doctor is sort of ingrained
Right?
into my training, so that learning to be more loving, learning to be more compassionate evolved over time, in particular with my own personal experiences as I realized, that I was human, I also began to understand what it meant to be compassionate, so.
And so many times it's the healer that needs to heal themselves, right? And
Yes.
so being loving towards others and towards your patients also meant being loving towards yourself. And that's that mirror that we
Yeah.
put up and go, wow, because so many times as a healthcare practitioner, we end up seeing ourselves in the people that we treat, and it becomes this big mirror. And so I love that
Yeah.
acupuncture had you become more compassionate and more loving. And I think all MDs should study acupuncture if that would be the result, because that amount of love and compassion supports healing, even on a psychological level. The patient really picks up on it if they feel like the doctor is with them on that level.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that feeling that of confidence when the doctor's with them on that level.
Mhm.
Do you have any specific stories that you can think of that you'd like to share when it was so surprising, when you were even surprised that acupuncture was able to help that patient?
Well, early on, it was the biggest, actually, one of the stories is my own. Because when I first started, before I started studying acupuncture, I thought I should try it. And I met an, an respiratory therapist in the hospital that I was working in, and who had finished acupuncture school fairly recently. So he was still working as a respiratory therapist as he built his practice. And so I went to see him right after I left my residency, and he gave me some acupuncture. And I think I didn't have any symptoms when I scheduled the appointment, but when I walked in, I had a migraine. And I had the kind of migraines that would last 3 days no matter what I did.
Oh,
And, if I took a pill or if I got a shot or whatever, they just wouldn't go away. And they were extremely uncomfortable. And I went in to see him barely able to function, and he gave me acupuncture. And I think for the first 5 hours, I felt worse, and it was terrible. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then it went away, and completely away, and this was on the first day. So that was a miracle in my life. And then another time, I had the flu, and I called him and canceled. I was like, I had this terrible sore throat, and I had a fever of 102 or something. And he said, no, come in. I can help you. So I went in, and he poked my thumbs at the very end, like at the corner of the fingernail, and took a little drop of blood out. And within 2 hours, my sore throat and my fever and almost all my symptoms were gone. To me, that was miraculous, because you can be so sick when you have the flu, and I was deadly sick. And it's funny because those are two relatively little things, but they were remarkable to me. And of course, they're not stories of me healing people. They were of my acupuncturist healing me, but they were what made me really a believer.
mm-hmm.
And the stories of people that have been miraculous are this, I had one woman who came in with a pretty large ovarian cyst. It was like 6 inches. And she was going to have surgery in like a week if she didn't get rid of it. And I did one treatment, and that ovarian cyst went away. And
No.
I
Wow.
honestly, I'm not sure how that happened, because that's not the usual. But yeah, she had a remarkable healing.
That's so
Um,
wonderful. When the
yeah,
body's ready for it, when that's what the body needs.
Yeah.
Some people go to acupuncture and they say, I didn't feel anything. And then some people go to acupuncture and have these amazing experiences. Um, when someone doesn't feel something, is it because they need to go for more treatments? Is it, more like over time? Or are they just seeing the wrong practitioner? What's going on? Have you ever had that where you had a patient not feel anything or have any difference, and what would the adjustment be for them?
Yes, I've had patients who didn't feel any difference. And then it's always frustrating, of course, because I want to help everybody. But there are some people, and sadly, physicians are amongst that group of people. There are some people, they seem impenetrable on an energetic level. Um, a guy that I saw in the last year he has MS. Um, Not to the point where it's affecting his life terribly, so he's still able to walk and talk and do things, but he was having back pain. And I did 6 treatments on him. I said, give me 6 chances, to see if anything, and nothing changed. Nothing. Like, he did not feel a thing. And normally, there are some people who don't feel anything in the first 2 or 3 treatments because it takes a while for your body to awaken to whatever energy movement there is or whatever. But this guy, nothing. And so sometimes people just don't feel it. And that's why there's a million ways to heal, is because some people don't respond to it. Some people respond to homeopathy, or they'll respond to massage, or, like, there's so many different ways of doing things. And my solution for people when they don't respond is really, I say, I want acupuncture to be the modality that works for you. But if it doesn't, let me help you find something else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll find them a massage practitioner or a chiropractor or a homeopath or any other things. There are times when acupuncture doesn't work for somebody because of the practitioner.
Mm.
Or again, that's why I call my business Heart to Heart, because with Heart to Heart, it means that you have a connection. And I always give, even in these years when I'm really busy, I give a free 15-minute interview, because you have to feel the connection to feel comfortable with who you're practicing with, or who's working with you, because in order to feel safe enough to let your energy move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always give that free 15-minute consultation to give them a chance to decide if they feel that connection with me.
Got it. And now, have you ever worked with someone with MS and seen results and had positive results?
People, not to say, but there are different personalities for different illnesses, and MS is a difficult set of personalities. But yes, I've had people have results. I have one guy who was diagnosed with MS a few years ago, and he was progressing, and he has not had any flare-ups until the fire. We just recently had these big fires here, and since the fires, he's started to progress a little bit, and he hasn't seen me very much because of all the stress. But before that, he had vertigo. Before he came to see me, he had vertigo, and he was having weakness and numbness in his legs. And the vertigo was crippling. It made him very, very ill. And he hasn't had vertigo since he started seeing me. Um,
Wow.
and he hasn't progressed in terms of the weakness or symptoms in his legs. That's 4 years. So he's done well. So I've had a few MS people who've done well, and I've had people who didn't respond at all. So
I love that you sit down with them, and if they're not getting the results you want them to get, that you help them find the practitioner or the modality that would. That is truly heart to heart. You really are caring about them as an individual, and I
well, of
love I
course,
love
yeah.
that. I love that. I wish all practitioners did that and were like that. But that's just a great example of the kind of healer that you are. In our Facebook group, the Learn to Health Facebook group, I let them know that you were going to come on the show, and a few people posed some questions for you. Barnetti asks how to pick the right acupuncturist for chronic illness. So what's there's different styles of acupuncture. There's, like, I know there's like the 5 element acupuncture is one style, and And like, even like you said, there's more of a Japanese style, there's a Chinese style. Now there's more an adaptation, Western styles. How should we choose an acupuncturist? Is it that we connect with them on an individual level, or is certain styles better for certain illnesses?
Well, that's a good question. The five elements style is probably better for emotional, spiritual concerns and is amazing in its way of addressing those levels of concerns. And I am not an expert in the five elements style, although some people say I practice traditional Chinese medicine with a five elements approach because I always include the emotional, spiritual in what I do. Um, but so the five elements is more oriented towards the emotional, spiritual underneath layer. Choosing an acupuncturist, like that's what one of the things is, finding somebody who has a level of experience that you feel comfortable with. Two is getting a chance to speak to them and see if you feel physically, comfortable in their presence. And three is, of course, trying the acupuncture and making sure that the style that they practice works for you. So, I would say if you're going to try acupuncture and you're going to see a practitioner and you've done all the other elimination process, once you try having treatments, have at least 4 treatments with that practitioner before you dismiss it. Because that's about how long it takes for their style and for your energy to receive it if you've never, ever, ever had it. So.
Oh, very interesting. So, a family member of mine, and I won't disclose who they are, had night sweats really bad, and their naturopath didn't really know what was the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
The person didn't have any outward, like anything like cancer or blood sugar issues or endocrine or detox. They couldn't really figure out what it was. But they were having night sweats to the point where the bed was soaked every
Mm-hmm.
night, and they weren't feverish. They'd be like just slightly over maybe a little bit warm, and they would
Mm-hmm.
just sweat and sweat. And so this family member of mine, went to an acupuncturist and didn't tell the acupuncturist anything about their history. The acupuncturist felt this family member's pulse, looked into their eyes, and said, "Oh, you have night sweats." Freaked them out, totally freaked them out. It was so interesting that they could just do something as simple as feel their pulse, look in their eyes, and say, "You have night sweats." The night sweats went away for quite a while after that one session.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really, really interesting. And now they only come back once a blue moon, just after one session. Was that an energetic problem, or how did acupuncture, resolve that so quickly?
Well, night sweats are a condition in Chinese medicine that is connected to an imbalance between the yin and the yang. So all energy is described in terms of yin and yang. And so you can't just talk about energy, you have to talk about yin and yang. And the yin is cool, moist, feminine, nighttime, moonlight energy. Yang is hot, daytime, bright, sunny, masculine energy. And they interchange with each other. That symbol of the yin and the yang is a curved line because there's a flow between the two of them. And then there's a little circle on both ends, in there to show that one can convert into the other. And when yin is deficient or yang is excess, you can tell by looking at the pulse or feeling the pulse and looking at the tongue, and you can tell which element is deficient or excess. And it's that imbalance that can cause night sweats. And so for the most common cause of night sweats, of course, is perimenopause. And that is a classic yin deficient, meaning that the yin energy becomes less and the yang energy is relatively higher. And at nighttime, your yin energy is supposed to rise, and so that you can be cool and sleep and rest. So that, that's your nighttime energy. But if you're deficient in the yin energy, then relative to the nighttime, when the nighttime yin energy is supposed to rise, the yang energy is relatively higher. And then you will have night sweats because you don't have the yin to cool it down. So that is an amazing treatment, one treatment to make that all change. I usually do it in 4 or 5. But that's one of those, again, one of those moments where, as your relative was receptive and was probably shocked by the fact that the practitioner was able to see that in the first visit, and that it helped shift that person's energy, so quickly.
Yeah, it's a wonderful example, and thank you for explaining that. Christy in our Facebook group asks, can acupuncture cure plantar fasciitis?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
What
Next
about
question.
yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I laugh at my bad sense of humor because the concrete answer is yes, it can cure it. And there's always more of an explanation than that, right? So of course I could give more of an explanation. And the short answer is yes. So.
Wonderful. Well, plantar fasciitis is unfortunately becoming more common. At least I see it. I don't know if it's because we're all getting older and my friends are getting older. I don't know if it's that or if it's just becoming more common, but a lot of my friends are developing it, that and bone spurs. Yeah, please tell us, how is it that acupuncture can cure it? Is it that part of plantar fasciitis is an energetic imbalance, or can acupuncture really affect the physical that well?
The answer to that is both. So yes, so physical pain is when energy is not flowing, so energy is stuck, and there's a lot of elements to plantar fasciitis that you have to consider. And so any problem that a person has had that's caused them enough difficulty for them to come to me, because people usually come to me after they've been to 5 other practitioners. I'm not usually the first choice unless they've heard about me somewhere, But the reason they come is because they've had difficulty getting well and they're at the end of their rope. So first of all, my approach might be different than others. The first things I would think about are, shoes, life stresses, and other things that are going on. And I would address those in addition to doing acupuncture. But plantar fasciitis is, probably connected to posture and the shoes that people wear. And then I think the feet are connected to that whole concept of moving forward, and that maybe plantar fasciitis is more common because it's harder to move forward these days. There's so much challenge in our society and culture and how to figure out our lives. And so that might be a part of it too. And all of those things, again, acupuncture takes that all into account so that when I treat a person, if they're having pain in their feet, I'm often looking at their low back, looking at the structure of their legs and how it's moving. And when I do acupuncture, it's not just putting needles in your feet, it's actually working with your whole person. And that's, I think, why it's so successful, or why I'm so successful, is because I never look at the problem, the foot pain in this case, as the end all. I'm looking at what are the imbalances that are affecting your whole body and how can I help you get more balanced and address the pain in your feet. But it's never just looking at the pain in the feet. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because it's the imbalances that caused it in the first place.
Exactly. It's a whole person issue, no matter what the issue, even if it's a hangnail, it's like your whole person is involved in that condition. It's funny, the littlest things are the most annoying, right? So like if your pinky toe hurt, that's annoying because you can't wear shoes, So, but it affects your whole body, especially when it's been going on for a long time. It affects your whole body, So.
Christy asks, is there a routine acupuncture schedule? Like, should someone just for maintenance go once a month, or once every 3 months, or once a week? Or is it totally up to the individual and the practitioner?
Well, there's different levels of need for acupuncture. So usually I have people see me once a week initially. And if they have no major issue that I need to address, I have them see me once a week for a month or 6 weeks, to help shift their energy. If they have a health concern that's been there for some length of time, they may see me once a week for a longer period of time. So from 3 to 6 months sometimes. And then once they get to a place where they're relatively stable, a lot of women who have hormonal issues, this is common. I'll do 4 visits like once a week, where they'll see me once a week for a month. That'll shift their energy a little bit, or sometimes they'll need it for 8 weeks. So once a week for 8 weeks in order to shift their periods and their cycles enough. And then they see me once a month. And that goes on for however long they want. So that's one way to do things. I encourage that, especially as people are getting older, because I think acupuncture is sort of an anti-aging treatment as well, because it keeps your energy flowing. And the most important element to staying young is having flow in your energy and in your body.
Mm.
And so that's one option. Another option is to do quarterly treatments, and that's where you come in for a seasonal tune-up. So that would be at the beginning of fall, at the beginning of winter, at the beginning of spring, at the beginning of summer. And, because there are 5 elements. So at the shift of the seasons is when an element will shift to a different time. Actually, it's 5 elements and 6 times of year that you should have like a seasonal treatment. So it'd be every 2 to 3 months that you'd have a treatment.
And then there's an additional one for tax season, right?
Yeah,
that's the
one.
fifth. That's the 6th season.
The 6th one is really actually, so it's fall. It starts in September, it starts in September, and that's the season of the lungs. And then winter is the season of the kidneys, and spring is the season of the liver. And then in summer, it's sort of 2 times. There's the early summer, which is the heart, where you get fire in your blood and things. And then the harvest season, which is the spleen. And that all makes perfect sense. And so those are the times that you would have a treatment to balance you as you move into the new seasons and to prevent illness at those times.
Wonderful. I love it. I love the idea that we could do that maintenance after we've come to you for the acute situations.
Yes.
and gotten ourselves back into balance. Then we should just schedule with our practitioner or with you if the listener is local to you, would schedule for those times in the year when they come to you, like at the beginning of summer, and then or at the spleen time of the summer for like later in the harvest, for example. Is that just one treatment, or is there a series of treatments at the beginning of each season?
It depends. Like a lot of people come to me for their immune system to have it built up. And the time of the immune system is the lungs, because the lungs rule the immune system. And if they have issues with their immune system, I encourage them to have a series of treatments at the beginning of the season, because that's when you want to tune it up. Let's say if they had allergies, then you would want to come in the early season of the liver, because that's the time of year that allergies are most bothered. And you'd have a series of tune-ups to prevent the allergies. Or if in winter you get really severely fatigued because the kidneys rule the overall sense of having energy, then you would have a series of treatments. But quite often, just one treatment will be enough if it's not an issue.
That is so cool. I have to share that I, about 2 years ago, had this weird flare up. Out of nowhere, my liver just distended from my body, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So I go to my naturopath. She says, let's go get an ultrasound. Nothing's wrong. There's just elevated liver markers and an enlarged liver, but nothing's clogged, nothing's wrong. And she's like, okay. And I told her, like, I have this sensation, and the sensation was also either, if it wasn't in the liver, it'd be in the spleen. And I'm like, I feel like something is in my spleen. Now I'm freaking out, like thinking that there's something really wrong. And she said, I want you to go to an acupuncturist. And of course, I'm the biggest open-minded skeptic. I'm thinking to myself, I mean, I've had an amazing experience with acupuncture in the past. I know it works, but I'm thinking, no. I have cancer for sure. There's no way acupuncture is going to help me. And so I go see an acupuncturist, and within a few sessions, my liver no longer is inflamed. I no longer have that weird sensation in my spleen. It's totally gone. And it was all, and my naturopath called it was all, and like she called it energetic, and she's like, this is energetic, you got to go to an acupuncturist, after doing all the tests and ruling out, the crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was absolutely amazing that a sensation, I could feel this weird feeling in my spleen,
Mm-hmm.
almost like pain, but my body was like drawing attention to it. And my acupuncturist was like, "Oh yeah, I can feel that in your pulse. Let's work on it." And it was just after a few sessions, totally gone, never came back. Like,
Yeah.
have you seen this with your clients where they come to you with this kind of like weird phantom sensation, and acupuncture is able to just bring all the balance back to the body?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, that's the difference because especially when I started studying Chinese medicine, it was in the late 80s, and we didn't have functional medicine then. And we didn't have access to the kind of testing that we do now. And so there'd be problems that could not be explained by Western medicine, and I kind of I call it like a spectrum of wellness, if you will. So there's the spectrum of, let's say, you spread your arms the length of a yardstick, and on the left-hand side is complete wellness, no symptoms. And then you go all the way to like 20 inches along this yardstick, and there is before you get to medical tests that will show anything. And you actually had a medical test that showed something because your liver was enlarged, right? And
Hmm.
so the last 16 inches or even further down the line is when tests begin to show stuff, the conventional tests. Now we have functional medicine, and we know about viruses. So we might have found that you had Epstein-Barr virus at the time, or that you had some sort of toxin that you had been exposed to, and we would have been able to see it and do something about it. But acupuncture balances energy. In other words, it puts your body in a state where it can heal itself. That's what it does. And so, when you have a mystery problem, or like I call my work healing when it seems impossible, because I can see the impossible. I can see what's wrong. I can see what's out of balance with the tools that I have available from Chinese medicine, which in Western medicine we can't necessarily see.
How often do your patients get so balanced from your work that they no longer need medication?
Fairly often.
What kind of medications are most common that people are able to get off of because of acupuncture?
Well, hopefully pain medication, because it's very effective for pain. So a lot of people come to me because they don't want medication. So the question's a little tricky because they're coming before they even go on the medication because they don't want it.
Ah,
There are people who come to me who are on antidepressants and they want to go off of them. And I have been able to help people get off of drugs like that. I've been able to help people get off of high blood pressure medication or cholesterol medication or various other kinds of things. So I think it's fairly common. But what's more common is that they come to me before they even go on it because they don't want to.
so cool. Well, and I know acupuncture, I mean, obviously we can't have an experience of acupuncture right now unless you taught us acupressure. But could you teach something to the listeners, something that they could implement into their life, maybe a challenge you can give them that would have them utilize aspects of what you do so that they could see some positive results in their life?
Well, I have a whole list of those sorts of things, and they have nothing to do with acupuncture. They have to do just with being healthy or whole health. So the first thing is to love. And a lot of times when you have a difficult time with your body, you find it hard to love yourself or to love your body when it's misbehaving. You especially be angry at it, right? It's like, why is my body misbehaving? So many people come to me and say, I just want to be how I was before. And what they mean is they want to be how they were before they felt sick, right? But being sick has changed them. So they'll never be the same as they were before because they are a different human being now, first of all. Second of all, if you love your body and trust that it's going to do something for you, that it's trying to be your friend, no matter what it's doing, even if it's in pain or even if it feels ill, if you could trust from somewhere deep inside of yourself that there's a purpose for it, you will do better. And so I always say, start with love. Start with loving yourself. Start with loving the people that are in your life. Um, Even if you're having a very, very difficult time and you can't love yourself, love someone else. Because by loving another person or by giving love to another person, you're actually giving yourself energy, and it helps with healing. And love is like one of my friends calls it the healing most thing, the healingest thing. It's her in her language. Um, so one, start with love. Start with an appreciation for your body and your health. Two, and this is very, very, very mundane, but if you don't eat breakfast, start eating breakfast. Start by making sure that you have a protein containing meal at breakfast time. And if you are a person, like intermittent fasting is in right now, and it's a thing. But if you are a person who's into intermittent fasting, first of all, you have to have good enough adrenals to be able to do the fasting. And second of all, if you're going to do the fasting, do it later in the day and have a meal earlier in the day, especially if you have trouble sleeping, because the protein at breakfast can reset your adrenals so that you can have energy throughout the day and sleep at night. And do you want me to give one more?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
And then the third thing is that never give up. Like if you have a difficult problem, if you have a challenge in your health, never give up on yourself. Never give up on your healing. Never say die. Never say never. Because when we have challenges in life, in our careers, and I've had life challenges and career challenges all continuously in my life. So I'm an expert at this. But if you have a challenge that, and a doctor says, oh, you'll have this for the rest of your life, or you have this just because you're getting old and you're going to get old, and it's not necessarily true. And don't give up on your healing. I always tell people that as long as you're alive, you have living cells, and those cells have the possibility of remembering how to get well. So all we have to do is give them the right input so that they can remember. Now, sometimes that means taking a medication. Sometimes it means doing tests to figure out what is out of balance. And sometimes it means something as simple as taking an herb or a supplement or meditating or praying. I tend to deal with complicated situations, but don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your healing. So those are my 3 tips.
I love that point. It reminds me of something that I learned years ago when studying to become a practitioner of NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis, working with the unconscious mind a lot. There is the blueprint of perfect health and healing inside you. And
Yes.
you may not be there right now, but you can awaken that blueprint. Your body knows, your cells know, you have programming inside you. The blueprint of perfect health and healing is inside you. And so instead of giving up, access, just believe that you have this blueprint and your body wants to come back into balance. And you can find the practitioners, you can find the modalities, you can keep seeking and find what is going to help you come back into balance, but your body wants to and will work with you because you have inside you the blueprint of perfect health and healing. And so that goes right along with your never give up. And I love your breakfast because I cured myself of chronic adrenal fatigue, and I know all too well one of the reasons that got me there was skipping breakfast. It's so true.
Exactly.
And you love and appreciation. You could also add gratitude to that. It's because love and appreciation to me is gratitude. But the second you focus on what you're grateful for, you start realizing you have so much more health than you think you do. Because we're focusing on what we don't want. Like you focused on the toe that was hurting or your migraine. And we forget to be thankful for the strong beating heart we have. I recently went through pneumonia, and lying there in bed with a fever. I was lying there, obviously miserable because I was, I'm a health nut. What am I doing lying in bed with pneumonia? And, but I started thinking about what I was grateful for. I'm like, I am so grateful for my body that's fighting this. I've got a fever. That means my body's fighting this. I am so grateful for my strong, healthy beating heart. I am so grateful for, and I just went on and listed every aspect of my health and my body that was working, that was in alignment, that was strong. And I realized that I could come up with a list of 100 things I was grateful for, and that the pneumonia was just one of the things I wasn't grateful for. And it really made my experience of being sick at the time much better. So I
Oh,
love that was my way of bringing love and appreciation into a situation where it wasn't there.
yes,
So
yes,
I love your
exactly.
points. That's very cool, and I think that's incredibly powerful to practice those 3 points. Now you have a fantastic book. I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your book, Healing When It Seems Impossible: 7 Keys to Defying the Odds. I know a lot of listeners who are listening have either overcome health issues or are currently looking to overcome health issues. And so I think that this is very meaningful. Can you share a bit about your book and who should read it?
Sure. Well, I gave you three of the keys, or two of the keys, love and never give up. But basically, healing when it seems impossible is the description. It's like if you feel like you have gotten into a place in your life where you feel like you're hopeless, or you feel like you aren't going to get the wellness that you seek, or aren't going to achieve your dreams of feeling as well in your body as you'd like. That's who this book is addressing. And the other people are the people who have that modern illness, where kind of they're people who are overachievers in their life. They do everything and they're on the go and do, and then they get sick and then they feel terrible and can't function in the way that they used to. And so I see a lot of those kinds of patients, and so that's basically the audience. Although you want to say everybody should read this book. Of course not.
Well, it's, you know what, it's if we aren't in sickness right now, I think it's great to arm ourselves with tools so when we face something down the road, we already have the tool. Because sometimes when we're sick, we don't have the energy to read the book to learn the tools that we wish we already had.
Yeah.
So everyone could benefit from your book. We just have to learn the tools and remember to utilize them when appropriate. That's very cool. And I love that you bring your many years of experience as a healer to the table. Well, when you wrote this book, I think that's incredibly powerful. Now, where is your clinic located so listeners who are local could come see you in person?
I'm in Santa Rosa, California.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a
So that's where the fires recently were. So
right.
interesting that I'm talking about healing when it seems impossible, because it feels like it's almost impossible for my community to heal.
Oh,
And of course it's not, but it's a big, big shock to our whole community. So,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
actually, when I was trying to figure out why did I get pneumonia, where'd this come from? I'm in Washington State. We also had many fires. It was pretty crazy throughout August and September. We had just constant smoke in the air. You could look at the sun without sunglasses at any time during the day if you could see the
Yeah.
sun, because there was so much smoke we couldn't see the sun at times.
Yeah.
And that's when I talked to some naturopaths, and they said that all their clinics are filled with people with lung problems.
Mhm.
And in fact, one naturopath I know got pneumonia as well. And so the consensus is that those who were exposed to the smoke are now their lungs are kind of more susceptible to maybe getting an infection because they're inflamed or unhappy from all the smoke. Are you seeing an increase in lung related issues, and is acupuncture helping them?
Well, um, I did a couple of free clinics right after the fires, and I had a man come to me who had a lung transplant. So I had never seen anybody like that. And he didn't lose his home, but he had severe concerns about the smoke and the smoke inhalation. And the acupuncture helped him a lot. And there's supplements that will help you with that. To be honest, I have not seen as many people who had lung concerns, because I think everybody's in PTSD at the moment. Everybody's in shock, and
Mm.
the level of trauma is beyond the lungs at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I am concerned about people's lungs because it was terrible, terrible smoke inhalation. I think it's maybe more for people who were further away because, we had 6,000 homes that were burnt
Oh,
to the ground, and people who lost everything. And then there are people who didn't lose everything but came very near to it and had to escape in the middle of the night. And so their lungs were, unless they couldn't breathe at all, their lungs were not their first concern.
got it. So do you think when people heal from the stress, and the emotional upheaval,
Hmm.
will the body, because the body kind of goes through like it goes through what the most critical systems first, but are they going to need to work on their lungs, or is this more that they really need to work on the emotions?
Well, I think both. There's always the physical and the emotional. And so what I'm doing a lot of right now is helping people with PTSD, with the trauma. Um, you know, Both the people who lost their homes and the people who didn't. The people who didn't lose their homes feel guilty. The people who
Mm.
lost their homes are still devastated and are still struggling with day to day, where do we live things. Um, and this is, of course, just my experience. So, there might be other people who are seeing different levels of practitioners, but this is what I'm seeing. Um, and so, yes, I think the lungs are a concern. And every person that I see that has been, I'm dealing with it on every level. I'm working on their lungs. I'm working on their emotions, on their spirit, on every element in order to help them heal as much as possible.
Mm.
I'm giving, yeah.
Post-traumatic stress, I mean beyond the crisis that your location is going through, I mean, is ongoingly for veterans, a really big issue. uh
Yes.
do you see incredible success working with your patients who have post-traumatic stress, or veterans with acupuncture? Can they get on the other side of it?
Yes, there's actually a movie with Andrew Weil called, I think it's, what is it they do when there's a fire and they try to backfire or backdraft or,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, there's a movie that's called that with Andrew Weil as the narrator. And there's a huge section on veterans and soldiers and acupuncture. It's so cool. And the head or the originator of the American Academy of Medical Acupuncture, which is physicians who do acupuncture, his name is Joe Helms, is working with the military to provide acupuncture for PTSD. And it is making a huge difference. And in this movie, they show, soldiers who are being flown from wherever they were in Iraq or Iran or wherever, and they're on stretchers and they're being given multitudes of drugs and they're in terrible pain because they're in these big cargo jets, right? And they're being flown to various hospitals and they're loaded up with drugs. And with there's a 5 points on the ear that can be put in acupuncture needles. They don't need the drugs. And they can be, they showed, videos of soldiers who go in with 5 grocery bags of medications and they come out with almost no medications, having been treated by acupuncture. So huge, huge implications for PTSD and helping the military.
Wow. On that level of success, you'd think that the pharmaceutical companies would be threatened.
Well, I think they might be.
Good. We're doing our job. Yes. Good.
You say that with the perfect amount of evil in your voice.
Well, fight fire with fire.
So to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. I'm thrilled with the work you're doing. You're such an incredible healer. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you so much for the book you wrote. And I'm so thrilled for the listeners, because no matter where they are in the world, I hope that the takeaway is that they go and they try acupuncture, and they see that it is this modality, this magic modality that can really bless their life in so many ways, and that they can integrate it into their life, regardless of what other practitioners they're seeing. that it is, there's no like negative side effects, right? It doesn't come with a warning that causes anal leakage. Like it is, it's safe. Right? I mean, as an MD, did you ever go like, look at the side effects? Like, why am I prescribing this medication? The side effects are worse,
Yes.
you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and acupuncture doesn't come with negative side effects, does it?
Well, it has a few. I mean, there are acupuncture points that could kill you, actually.
Don't go to that practitioner.
Um, but we're all taught those so that we know not to do them, you know. And then there are acupuncture points, like if you did it wrong and somebody was very thin, you could cause a pneumothorax. And so there are negative side effects. And sometimes people have bruising from a needle or swelling, which I don't consider negative, but some people would. But no, the potential for harm is much less. So,
wow.
And just so you know, my book is not out yet. It's coming out probably in early summer. But if you sign up on my webpage I have another little book called Supplement Smart. If you sign up on that, you will learn when the book is coming out. So.
Oh, great. So everyone can get on the pre-order list for your book.
Yes. Yeah.
Terrific. So everyone can go to hearttoheartmedicalcenter.com. Is that the correct website?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. And the link to that will be in the show notes of the podcast, so we can all get on your email list and be notified when your book comes out. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Please come back anytime you want to teach us more about acupuncture and this wonderful healing modality. There's just so many different things. I'm surprised to find out how impactful it is, although I shouldn't be surprised. I should not still be surprised. At this point, this should be old hat, but that it could help things like end a plantar fasciitis, end PTSD, that it can end migraines. Of course, it can help with pain, but it does so many wonderful things, and that it is triggering the body's ability to heal itself and bring it back into balance. So this is just how powerful the body is. So it's thrilling. It's thrilling to know all the things that you can help someone with acupuncture. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was delightful speaking with you.
Enjoy what you heard today on your episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Did something move you, inspire you? Did you get great information that's going to change your life? Awesome. That's exactly what I'm here to do, is to help you gain your health back. Please turn around and share this. If this is something that's helped you in any way, share this with those you love. Love the Learn True Health podcast and want to support us? Awesome. You can go to takeyoursupplements.com and you can support us that way. You'll get access to amazing supplements that are just really great quality for a great price. And there'll be someone on the other end of the line to help you pick out your supplements that are right for you. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Or join our membership, learntruehealth.com/join. That's another great way to support our podcast, support our movement, and you'll be supporting yourself. Gain more information, wonderful videos, wonderful trainings, and you'll also be able to share those with those you love as well. So go to learntruehealth.com/join. Want something fun for free? Go to learntruehealth.com, and right there on the front page, you'll see where you can get our free cookbook. I spent a lot of time making it, and it was so much fun. It's really delicious, healthy recipes. And you can also get our 7-day doctor course. Right there, it's 7 days of naturopathic videos sent right to your inbox, and you can learn from top naturopaths on how to gain health naturally. So that's takeyoursupplements.com for wonderful supplements. learntruehealth.com/join to join our awesome membership, which is only open for a limited time. You can get our free healthy cookbook, and you can also get for free 7 days of wonderful naturopathic videos sent to you. Just go to learntruehealth.com and you'll see it right there on the front page. Thank you so much for being a listener, and thank you for sharing and helping others. Let's spread this information and turn this ripple into a tidal wave.